A group of people sitting down for a meal is a common sight at many small-town festivals, but this gathering is unique. The festival goers here have come from all around the country with a common purpose. They're here to study and celebrate the life of world-famous novelist and groundbreaking filmmaker Oscar Micheauz.
An African American providing his own perspective of the West makes him clearly a pioneer, in addition to the fact that he made those provocative films in the first period of his career in the silent era, and that he explored controversial topics that many people sort of steered away from, also makes him an incredibly important pioneer.
Before Oscar Micheauz broke ground as a filmmaker, he broke ground as a homesteader here near Gregory. In 1905, 21-year-old Oscar Micheauz came to this part of the Rosebud Reservation seeking a better life than the one he knew in Chicago. This was one of the last places in the country to be open to homesteaders, and Micheauz was eager to claim a piece for himself. He soon found life on the prairie was hard, especially for a single man.
He came out, he was by himself, he didn't have a family. A lot of pioneers relied, they had big families, they had brothers and fathers and helped him, but Oscar came out by himself.
He plowed 120 acres with a 14-inch breaking plow, and he said, and it's true, you walk 1,400 miles to break up 120 acres, which is about from South Dakota to New York, so that's a bit of a distance. As hard a life as this was, it probably gave him the drive to succeed. He knew from living here on this homestead there was only one way, and it was to succeed or die.
Hard work reaped rewards, and by age 24, Micheaux's homestead holdings were valued at $20,000. But life on the South Dakota prairie has always been unpredictable. 4 years later, drought hit and the crops dried up, causing economic crisis. To make money, Micheauz turned to writing.
And it's interesting to look at the old newspapers. In the one newspaper, they have a foreclosure notice for this piece of land, and in the same issue, they have a wonderful story wrote by the editor of the Gregory paper saying, Micheauz is coming out with this wonderful new book, The Conquest. It's going to be a bestseller.
The Conquest was about a young black man's experiences as a homesteader, and today is considered possibly the finest account of the homesteading experience ever written.
He had faith in himself, what he could do, and he also he could just deal with it. He was a talker, and he was a doer. He had to do these things, and he knew what he was up against.
When prejudiced bookstore owners wouldn't sell his book, Micheauz sold 2,500 copies himself, door to door. More novels followed, but by 1918, Micheauz left South Dakota and turned his creative energy toward new opportunities in a brand new industry.
When the filmmaking industry started, basically the movies were for the white audience, and there was nothing geared for the black audience. And so he decided this has got to change. So then the race movie industry started. And basically, the race movies were produced for the African American segment of the population, and they loved to go out and see people of their own color in the race movies.
Micheauz faced the same problems with his movies that he had earlier faced with his novels. Movie studios wouldn't make black movies. Theater owners were reluctant to show them. Micheauz wrote, produced, and marketed his films himself.
He had to fight the system each and every day. He had to fight those who wanted to take over, those who didn't like his procedure, those who didn't like him, period. Now, you have all that, all those things to fight against.
It just spurred a whole industry in the race movies, and Micheauz was the biggest one.
We're discovering another chapter in the history of American filmmaking. And particularly as an independent filmmaker, Oscar Micheauz becomes very important because he did it all outside of the studio system. and he had creative ways of raising money and getting his products out to audiences.
Micheauz died in 1951, leaving a legacy of 7 novels and around 35 films, each one independently produced and marketed. Despite the volume of his work, much of it went unnoticed for over 40 years. In 1995, Gregory residents decided to hold an annual film festival to honor their most famous one-time resident. The pioneering spirit that guided Micheauz lives today in the grassroots effort it took to get the festival started.
One of the first problems we had was no one here in our community was even very much aware of who Oscar Micheauz was. When you walked up and down Main Street and said, "Do you know who Oscar Micheauz is?" they said no. I think I've walked this Main Street every year with my little packet on Oscar Micheauz and leave it for the people in the stores so that they become more familiar. And we've started doing school programs for the young students so that as a younger age they'll be more aware of who Oscar Micheauz is. And I would say that probably now that we're in the 5th year, we no longer have that obstacle.
Not only were organizers able to educate Gregory residents, the festival today draws scholars from across the country, yearning for more insight into Micheauz's life.
To get to know the true Micheauz, you have to come back to where he started to see why that affected him so much.
When I first heard about the festival here, I didn't really know any particulars about his experience as a homesteader, at least not directly. I mean, I read about it, but I didn't know anything specific about the people who are also homesteaders here or descendants of homesteaders. And that kind of oral history really excites me. We're much more in tune with the great moments in life as opposed to the little moments, but it's the little moments that make the big ones.
Creating a nationally known film festival from scratch can be an exhaustive process, but organizers of this event had inspiration from Oscar Micheauz himself.
Every year is groundbreaking. We're pioneers. We're basically doing something that Oscar did. We're pioneering something.
I think that Oscar Micheauz shows that you can start with nothing and create something. If you have the determination, you can be a success. And if you really want to do something, go ahead and try. You can do it.